Welcome to Sports Buds Hockey Podcast, where two friends come together to discuss all things hockey and where everyone's opinion is appreciated. Please welcome your hosts, Merrick and Collin Simpson.
Hello and welcome to Sports Buds Hockey Podcast. This is Season 3, Episode 33. My name is Merrick and with me, as always, my buddy Collin Simpson. How are you doing tonight, Simps?
Doing great, Mav. The eve of the finals is about to start, so getting pretty excited.
Yeah, it's a big rematch. Obviously, we've got the Edmonton Oilers against the Florida Panthers. A lot of differences this year, and yet a lot of similarities. So we thought we'd come at you guys, give you a good preview, and really kind of get our take on, all the different aspects of the game, all the different players, what we've got in it, who we think favors, and maybe a few intangibles and a few other things just to throw in there what we think might happen in this. So, Sims, why don't we start it right out of the gate with what I think will be an easy conversation, but maybe not. They never seem to be for us. Why don't we compare the forwards for Florida and for Edmonton?
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of want to touch on based on how big a rarity this is. The fact that it is the same two teams in the final, it's a pretty big deal. 12th time in NHL history that it's happened. The most modern times you talked about on a podcast before was obviously the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2008 and 2009, I believe.
Yep.
And
with
then
Detroit,
the time before that, actually, though, is going back to 83 and 84 and it's the Oilers. And it's kind of a big talking point because they were talking about, some of the best players to ever play got their first cup on the second year of a back-to-back type thing, right? So
Wayne Gretzky, Sidney Crosby.
Sid didn't win the first year, but won the second year. Wayne obviously didn't win the first year, got the second year. So there's a lot of similarities to this final, and so it's pretty exciting to see this kind of happening because you got a bit of animosity. Both teams know each other. It should be interesting to see more of a mind game and a mental game as well, not just the physical portion of the game where the coaches have to be able to change their matchups and, they've seen each other before and they kind of know their tendency and they've seen them at their highest end. It's not like you're held back in any game. You've seen them do everything. So it's going to be pretty exciting. Looking forward to how this will pan out. And, obviously when we are talking about these two teams, one of the first comparisons you're always going to look at is going to be exactly like you said, the forwards. Obviously, both teams are got some proficient superstar forwards, whether it be Draisaitl and McDavid from one side, and Barkov and pick Kachuk probably on the other side if we were to take a couple. Although the secondary casts, whom are barely secondary, Reinhart and Bennett on one side, and Kane and Nuge on the other side. If you want to kind of balance out, it's that both teams have crazy riches up front.
Yeah, I think you might have mentioned it before. When you start comparing these, one thing, you had Reinhart and Barkov were both up for the Selke this year. Kind of a contrast, though. You also saw Draisaitl in there. He actually finished 6th and got his first Selke win vote, right? So they split it up 1-5. So he ended up 6th overall, so even seeing some for him as well. But obviously you got two guys that are defensive standouts on the other side. And you've got a guy like Reinhart with 54 goals last year, and now he's a Selke nominee as well. So I mean that is an all-around player. That's a 200-foot player, as they say. You've obviously got his contributions, you've got Barkov's contributions, but even with that, where do you put him? Do you split those guys up? Do you kind of try to put one on each line to get Draisaitl and McDavid and still have somebody out there with them? Do you just combo on up and hope that, the two of them together can at least shut down one of the lines for the most part?
Well, this is the part we were talking about when I say you have tons of riches up front. Sometimes that's not always the easiest thing, right? Sometimes when you have a team of two superstars and 3-4 good forwards, it's pretty easy to figure out where you're going to put these guys. You're stacking probably your top line, or maybe you're doing a 2-2 split. But with both these teams, the coaches really have to decide how are you going to break them up? Are you going to stack one line? Are you going to, split them across two? Or do you even go down to a third line and give a third line a score? There's so many good players that could move up and down the lineup in this type of thing. And it's going to probably be a long series. So you're also trying not to throw all your eggs in one basket to start. But at the same time, you want to make sure you get your superstars out there as much as possible. And you kind of saw that in that last series with Dallas was McDavid getting some PK time.
Yeah.
Because you're you want to spread things out, but at the same token, you want to make sure you get, your superstar some ice time. You don't want him to be, only hopping over the boards when you get an offensive faceoff. You want him to feel good about his game, get him skating more, and feel like he's more part of it, and so that when he does get a great offensive chance, he can take advantage of it. But
I
yeah, I
believe I believe that McDavid's actually first in, like, penalty kill chances off the rush or something like that and whatever, which is kinda obvious to be expected. I know I saw even in the Dallas series 2 or 3 different, like, 2-on-1s and stuff like that. Not always getting a shot, not always getting a good chance, but making something happen because he's McDavid and he's out there. Having that space. You've also got everybody committed the other direction, so it makes a big change that way.
well,
And
and
so much more ice for him.
it changes the dynamic of a power play, right? If and I've seen a few other teams do it before as well with their most offensive player, usually a guy with a bit of speed going out on the PK. Like obviously you don't want to burn them out, nor do you want them in the way of getting bombed shots, right? So that's one of the reasons you don't put your stars out there either. If it starts to getting to the point and they just start bombing shots, and that forward's supposed to be getting in the lane and blocking the shot. Obviously you're not wanting McDavid to do that, but what it does is you're a little less lenient or less likely to be throwing pucks to the point too often if Connor's up pressuring the points, because one little bobble and it's a breakaway and probably a 90% chance of a goal. So you're more leery of that. You're trying to keep the puck down low, and maybe you're holding your stick a little tighter and you're not taking those advantages. And then the other three guys can kind of stay down a bit lower, collapse in there, and try to give up the point a little, right? Trying to say, hey, go ahead, throw one back there. Right. And I think that's part of one of the things that helped them against Dallas's power play, because Dallas had a few in the first game, and that's kind of when they switched it up a little, getting Connor out there.
Yep.
And again, like I said, it is a bit of a risky game. More stuff can go wrong to a player when you're scrambling around on a penalty kill. You can get more injuries probably, but it's a tactic that can be used. And they don't really usually you go your third and fourth liners usually in that role, but I kind of like the play that
Well, Nuge is
Knobloch
another
did.
one, right? Quite often you've got Nugent Hopkins out there as well. So now you've got those two guys at times together, which are obviously, dynamic offensively together. So yeah, you create that option and that risk all the time for a power play. All right. So with that said, there's been a lot of talk about depth, about what these teams are bringing when it comes to forwards. I know for the Oilers, they've got 13 forwards now, I think, that have scored a goal. On the other side, I think Florida, they said there's, I think, 7 or 8 different players with 10 points this year. So good balance there as well. So, who do you give the edge to?
I think from a perspective of, if I was just say looking at the names, I'm looking at the names right now. I'm staring right at the predicted lineups for both teams. And let's say if we're going to talk depth, let's try to say like third and fourth. We'll stay on the third and fourth type lines. I really think in the third line, I give this hands down to Florida. So based on what I'm watching, they're looking at right now, you got Luostarinen, who's been really good. Lundell's pretty good, and Marchand, right? Who's obviously been a beast. He's been there and everything like that. Against Frederick, Henrique, and Connor Brown. Connor Brown's had an amazing playoffs. I would never take anything away from this playoffs. But if you were just give me on paper those two lines all day long. I do think, though, the opposite for the fourth line. AJ Greer, Nosek, and I can't even say this guy's name, Gadjevich, against Podolskin, Janmark, and Arvidsson. I feel like, especially Podolskin, I think he's had a fantastic playoffs. I give the edge easily to Edmonton in that. So from this perspective, like I just
you got
don't
1
know.
and 1 for the third and fourth line. And now what do you do for the overall? Just give me your overall. Who do you give the edge to for forwards?
Yeah, you can't not give the edge to Edmonton in this scenario, right? And that's the Connor and Leon factors. I think Nuge and Evander Kane get easily matched out against, pick one of the two from the other side, Bennett and Reinhardt, or Kachuk and Reinhardt, or however you want to take it. Those guys match out. But I think Barkov sits really high up there in the sense of, would I take him in a Stanley Cup run big part as much as maybe Draisaitl? Yeah, and as much as how much I love Draisaitl, I hold him right up there with McDavid. But then there's no one else that sits even close to Connor, right? And in that scenario, so from a forward perspective, I would say that, and it's showed in the goal scoring already. First in goals for per game for Edmonton, and they're only hitting on fourth overall in the power play, which can only come up from there, in my opinion. Which means they got some more to give. I think it's close. It's as close as it's ever been so far for the season for both teams that they've matched up against. And but yeah, from the forwards, I would give it to the Oilers, but not by a ton.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. I think overall, I think the depth on both of these teams has grown and gotten better even since last year. I would say this year I would give it to the Oilers, but I would also say that I think it was maybe call it marginal or close last year, but I might have given it to Florida last year. And I think Edmonton's grown more. Like if you want to put a number on it, you want to do whatever. I think Edmonton's come up higher. I think they're where they are and where their ceiling is at now for those guys is higher than last year and higher than where Florida is this year. So I think that they've gotten that much better. So I think it's a big plus for them. So I would say Edmonton as well.
Yeah,
And that's obviously in the end you've got your McDavid factor. That's just there is no comparison.
and when you're talking about that, that's something I've read a bunch of the last couple of days. Is the amount of experience gained. So Florida has been there now 2 years in a row already. So yes, they won a cup, but the experience they gained from winning their cup to getting back there this year is nowhere the experience that Edmonton gained from now being there last year to being there again this year, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
the fact is they just had never had that experience to be in the finals. Now they've had it. The same thing that Florida had the year before.
Yeah.
Florida had never had the experience, lost, come back the next year and go. The big difference there is it feels less, nervous. And Connor talked about it again just after the Dallas series. I think he was
Yep.
in an interview talking about the fact that it just doesn't feel chaotic. It doesn't feel too pressured. It just feels normal to them now. They've been there,
Emotions.
they've done that.
Yeah, they talked about it emotionally. They're not drained this year. All of that stuff. We talked about it a little bit. Just how hard those series were, and how much of the overtime games, the whole Vancouver series, all of that kind of stuff. And everything was stressful. Everything wore on them, and so yeah, it was a big difference. All right, let's switch it up. Let's go to defense. So obviously you've got some guys putting up points on both sides. You've got Ekblad. You've got I think Schmidt actually has quite a few points as well. And then obviously on the other side you've got Bouchard is leading the way and just absolutely killing it again in the playoffs offensively, but he's actually been accountable defensively as well. So where do you see the I guess just the edge in this one? Is there an edge, or is it even closer maybe than last year as well?
Yeah, I would say like when it comes to Bouchard, he's kind of had a tale of two cities type of playoffs. I felt like he came out in that LA series and looked like the Bouchard I've known for years, where offensively he looks amazingly, and then under any pressure, he looks like he's never seen a hockey puck before, and he's definitely changed that up over the last series, maybe last series and a half, to be honest, where he's had way less turnovers, he's been way more calm, he's maybe taken a few less risks. And I think it's worked out for him really well. I think it's helped his confidence, obviously, as well. He's not feeling under pressure. He's not in the media every night about we're not giving him $5 million, let alone the 15 that he's probably going to command or something like that, right?
Yep.
Definitely so he's had a good series. Obviously, I think some of the other guys have played quite well as well. Obviously, Ekholm's just back, so I don't know where he is yet. Obviously, I rate him very high in the regular season.
He's probably in Edmonton, the games tomorrow.
Possibly. But I just don't know if he's quite ready to be where I could say, like, you can count on him for his usual 26 minutes of, we just don't know yet. There's not enough games back.
He looked okay in the game, but he looked like it was his first game action in a while.
Correct.
So,
what do we see now in the finals? Drew Doughty factor that we watched in the Four Nations and in the playoffs, right? Sometimes it's, coming back for one game and looking okay is great, but then you weren't expected to play 4 or 5 games in a row, right? That can be very different coming back from an injury to just play a one-off and be like, oh, he looked all right in the one. So we'll see how that pans out. Obviously, from paper, again, all you can kind of do. I would definitely give this to Florida in the sense of, Forsling has really turned into a really good defender. Aaron Ekblad, maybe not as good as he maybe once was thought to be, but still a top-line defenseman. I think the acquisition of Seth Jones is probably the thing that pushes me over where I would push these guys ahead of Edmonton. I think his experience and his skill set, and then like you said, Schmidt's having a good offensive playoffs. I don't really still rate Kulak as high. Has he played okay? Absolutely. I don't think he's made any major errors. I don't think he's done anything spectacular that you're like, oh, let's talk about Brett Kulak. I think Klingberg has always had a rebound from where he was at before. He's played better, and I think Wallman's played better. But if you were to just say you got to take one of these two lineups for the 6 at the back, I would probably take Florida in a series like this, in a playoff series.
I like the defense. I like what Edmonton did. When you compare it to last year, you're looking at Bouchard and Ekholm up front, and then we'll call it the same thing with Nurse and Kulak, even though it was Nurse and Cece most of the time, right? So you're looking at a team last year that had Cece and then either Broberg or Desharnais in the lineup, right? And obviously, if you take 24-25 Broberg with his 60 points for St. Louis and whatever else, that's fine. But he was not that Broberg last year. He is starting to develop a bit. He got a couple points, in the Dallas series and whatever, but he was okay, right? Came in as the third pair guy because Desharnais just couldn't be trusted anymore. And so it was, Kulak and him all the time, and then Nurse and Cece. So to trade out Cece and Broberg or Desharnais from last year for Wallman and Klingberg, I think you've got so much more puck moving ability. I think you've got better passing. You're going to have better breakouts. You're going to have better all of that. And I think that's why I would actually give the edge to Edmonton at this point. I know that there is some strength there with Florida for sure, but I think just the improvements they've made, I think that is exactly what they were missing a lot last year. And I think that's going to give them the edge in this series.
And I agree. I think they did a great job of bringing these guys in. I just don't know yet. I know it's been a full playoffs, but like neither Wallman or Klingberg were near as good in the regular season than they have been in the playoffs. I think they've stepped their game up massively, and I sometimes wonder if they haven't overstepped up their game because I don't feel like Edmonton's had a lot of pushback from the teams they've played. And we'll soon see what's the difference between their time and space to be able to do those breakup passes when a bigger, stronger, faster Florida team is coming in on the forecheck. I think you're going to see a bit more turnovers than you've seen in the last, like more towards the LA type of ones where you got people coming in.
If you want to save, doing all this, I could just cut in you telling me that that's what Dallas is going to do, and then cut in when you told me that's what Vegas was going to do, and I can just cut all those ones in, and you can keep slagging those defenders from Edmonton. But I'm telling you, they're going to do just the same thing they did to those other teams.
One's a Stanley Cup champ, the other two aren't. So there's a big difference.
Vegas doesn't count?
They
Are we only counting 80s championships for your Flames?
I believe we're counting the teams that were still the same team that won the championship, not a whole different team.
Right? Oh, it was 2 years. Come on. It's not even that far.
Yeah, they were not a Stanley Cup
and they beat this Florida team.
So
if we're going to start talking.
Yeah, different.
Anyway, yes, no, they are going to take away time and space for sure. Obviously, you're going to see.
We're going to see. Well, we'll see.
A good forecheck.
You're going to see a lot of turnovers from Edmonton. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah,
I know you've gone a little without them, but you saw them in LA, and LA was nowhere near the team that Florida was.
True story.
So there's a reason why they were the Stanley Cup champs last year, and your team was not.
We'll see.
So
that always happens.
You can always say we see until it actually happens, but that's the case.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
All right. So we disagree a little bit on defense. I'm right. You're wrong. We'll just move on. So now we'll go to goalies.
I'm an analyst, not a homer.
Oh, come on. You think I bleed blue? Anyway.
Yeah, I do.
I probably do a little bit. Anyway, so now let's go to goalies. There's no way we can disagree on goalies. What are you seeing here, Sips?
Well, obviously, I don't think there's any person on the planet other than an Oilers fan who's picking Skinner ahead of Bobrovsky. Do I believe in Bobrovsky a ton? No, I think at times Bobrovsky goes and becomes one of the worst goalies on the planet. He's done that before when he signed his contract, and you're just like, everything goes through that guy sometimes. But the guy's won the cup. He's been in one of the top goalies for many, many years. He's a Vezina type winner. Skinner's done none of these things. Right?
So, question for you. One of the things that I've seen a few times, just different things I've read and whatever else. Games 1-3 last year, Edmonton was shooting towards Bobrovsky's strengths, right? And I can't remember now offhand if it was low or if it was, glove side or, whatever. They're shooting to where he's strong. And then games 4-6, they kind of figured it out and started changing what they were doing. And then game 7, they just locked it down and there wasn't much space for anything. But do you believe that there is some weakness there? Do you believe that they figured it out and that's why they did well? Was it just momentum and they just started just firing and the puck started going and that's just what it is? Like, what do you think is kind of the...
I think that plays a little. I don't believe it plays as much as like in a sport like baseball where there is kind of like real weaknesses in a swing and things like that, and what they can hit and can't hit. And I think if you're in the NHL and you're a top goaltender, there's no way you can be like, well, you just can't save a puck high. What? How are you in the NHL? Like, come on. I get
I
that
think it's
there's
more like, especially they talk about it with Skinner all the time, right? It's a little bit of certain specific types of plays, like his lateral side to side
correct.
isn't as good.
That's different to
So,
me.
like making that more of your option, more of your
Correct.
option on the power play, more of your option, just making that extra pass because
But I'm
he'll
talking about
save a
shooting.
shot
I'm
from
talking about
here.
shooting in this different spot, though. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. I agree. Some goalies get erratic, and even if you're looking at a guy like Hasek, you want to get him flying around. Like there's certain goalies who like to overplay things, and
yeah,
those type of goalies you want to go, horizontal passes to get them
yeah.
moving
Get
because
something
they'll get
happening, and
out of
then
the zone.
yeah,
Or a big goalie who just stays in the middle. You don't want to just ripping shots. I just don't think like I remember hearing the exact same thing last year, and they're like, "Oh, you just got to shoot at this part of his glove." Okay, I get 3 or 4 went in like that, but that could just be the fact that you just took a nice shot and you didn't save it.
yeah,
You don't get scored on the 5 hole, and it's like, oh, every single shot on the 5 hole should go in now because he let one in there or 2 in a row there.
yeah.
No, it's not. Doesn't mean he's crap at the 5 hole. It means you took a good shot. He happened to be sliding a little at that moment. You made him move a little to the side, and it's a goal. So I don't think it plays a ton. I think it does maybe just get into the head a little, and it's kind of, I want to say disrespectful because it's not really. You're just trying to shoot, but when you score somewhere, you do see the next 6 or 7 shots go that same spot. You're kind of like, okay, listen, the goalie's going, okay, fuck you guys,
Yeah.
man. Like
Fine.
I can.
I let one in. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't think it makes
So
that much of a factor.
all right. So looking at this, I think you go, if we want to say career and whatever else, sure, you got to go Bobrovsky. Like you said, Vezina trophies. I think he's second or third all time now in playoff wins, like not all time, but like active leaders kind of thing. What do we see moving forward? Are we thinking that, like, yes, career wise he's there, but given the last 10 games from Skinner, given the last or 9 games, whatever it's been, 8 games, I guess, 8 games since he got back, right? He's 6-2. He's 3 shutouts. He's, a couple of 1-goal games. Like, going into where they are right now, who do you give the edge to? Like, I don't think Bobrovsky was tested that much against Carolina. A little bit. I don't know that he stole a game, but I also don't know that Skinner stole a game. I think he made a couple amazing saves that, preserved a 3-goal lead or preserved a shutout or, a couple of those things. And I think he made some big saves when he needed to. There was a couple times there was a good shot at a 2-1 or a, 1-0, a few of those that he did save. But I don't know that he was particularly overly worked to say that he's been dominating against Dallas. But, where do you give the advantage to now? Right now, moving to game 1 of this series.
Well, here's the thing: these 2 goalies are identical in the way that they play the game. Like I'm reading some stats here that, and even from last year, so even this year, Bobrovsky started out allowing 13 goals on his first 81 shots of the playoffs. An .840 save percentage, .410. Stuart Skinner started out with allowing 15 goals on 82 shots for 5.36 goals against and an .817 save percentage. Since then, both goalies have been lights out. Skinner, I think, shows .944 and 2 shutouts for Bobrovsky since. And Skinner, same thing, is 6-1 with a 1.441 GAA and a .944 save percentage since his horrible start. So again, it comes down to both goalies can be lights out and both goalies can go the other way. And even last year's finals, Bobrovsky's games that they won, the 4 games they won, he was lights out. The games they lost, he was atrocious. And yes, I get the fact you're not going to be as good as the games you win versus the games you lose, but you should still.
Yeah, but you can still lose 3-1 with an empty netter.
Correct.
And have had a decent game.
It shouldn't be a blowout. Every time you have a bad game, you get blown out.
Yeah.
And so right now, I'd be flipping a coin. Honestly, I'd be flipping a coin. I would give it to Skinner only based on the fact that I picked the Oilers to have the stronger forwards.
Yeah.
Therefore, making it harder for Bobrovsky on his side.
Fair enough.
Making it a little easier on Skinner. But other than that, it's a coin flip on what you're going to see out of what goalie.
Well, if I'm going to do that, then just to be, antagonistic, I'm going to pick Bobrovsky because they got the better defense, but I didn't. I picked Edmonton's defense too, so I'm going to go Skinner anyway. But I wanted to go. I was trying to just argue a little bit, but yeah, no,
Homer.
I think in the end, it's going to see what a week does. They both had a week off now,
Correct.
right? So yeah, it's great if it's a week to nurse any nagging injuries and get yourself recentered and do whatever. If it's a week off to come back and like just shell shock, right? You know, if the Oilers or Florida throw 25 shots in the first period at somebody, I mean, it's likely to be 4-0.
So
You know what I mean? Like,
here's my point, I guess, too, where I'm going to actually add on to the fact and where I'm going to now tip myself to the Oilers for goaltending because of the fact I'm not going to base it on just goalie versus goalie, like starting goalies versus starting goalie, right? So where I'm going to give them the edge is, let's say there's a bad game. It's a long series, possibly. If you have a bad game, need a rest, take a knock, something happens. I know that other goalie, I can't even say his name for Florida.
Pickard?
No,
Florida.
The Florida goalie. We talked about him earlier in the season on the podcast. He was actually playing quite well. But the fact is, Pickard has now been in this situation. He's played well. They've played well in front of him. If you were to say that one of the teams has to put in a backup at any time, and I said, okay, backup versus backup now, I'm taking Pickard.
Oh,
and So in that scenario, that's what would push me over the top from maybe just a coin flip to go with the Oilers on that, because I think that could factor into this. You never know.
Yeah. No, that's fair. All right, so now we'll just do special teams. We got power play and PK. So starting with power play, I think they're both pretty even. I know Edmonton's was dry at the beginning. They weren't scoring on the road. There's a bit of that kind of stuff, but it started to come alive. They hit, I believe they get a power play goal every game against Dallas. So it's starting to come alive, but I think it's still rated a little bit lower. But I think that could be pivotal if they can continue to explore that and continue to grow that part.
As always, special teams in any hockey game or any series is obviously very important. I think in this one, even more so. I think it's going to be a bit tough to score on 5-on-5 with these two teams. I believe there's not going to be any easy play up through the middle. I think for the first time in a while, I think Jack Eichel did a decent job against Connor and those guys, but I think obviously Barkov's that next level when you're talking about guys closing up and into the system from Florida. So I think on both sides, I think that's where you're going to be looking at and saying, okay, we really have to capitalize on our power plays because they're not going to be goals. They're not going to be easy to come by. So I think I give the advantage to Edmonton, just like I would have done to the Oilers in the 80s, the Penguins in the 90s. You just can't take two of the top players and put them on the ice like we were talking about in the last podcast. When they come off the half board and go to the net, what do you do? Right?
You cover one, you cover the pass, you cover the shot.
Yeah. I covet a lot of Florida players, but I'm not. If Sam Reinhart or Sam Bennett or somebody comes off the half boards, I'm not feeling the same way and worried as I am those other two guys. So in that scenario, that's where the advantage, I believe, comes in. You get a little more one-on-one space, and I don't think anybody from the other teams can handle either one of those two guys if they get a bit of space and start squaring up to the net and start heading towards the net. You just don't know what you do. You can't just let them go, but then you can't just double up and leave a guy back door, which has been their forte so far with Corey Perry getting goals on the back doors. And that's they're going to continue to go to that until it doesn't work.
Oh, for sure. All right. So here's I agree. I think I said they're going to keep going and keep growing with it, and it'll play a part of this series for sure. So just a kind of an interlude between the power play and PK discussion. What do you think the reffing is going to be like? Like, are we going to see 4, 5, 6 power plays each per game, 2 power plays per game? There's a few times where, I think they got, we talked about the pick plays. We talked about a few things like that where all of a sudden they started, somebody must have been yelling at somebody in the intermission or something, because all of a sudden they started calling them. What are we going to see in these finals? Because obviously in the reputation ahead of them, Florida is I don't want to say dirtier team, but they're the more aggressive, more likely to crash the net, more likely to, all of those things. I don't know that it's necessarily, with Perry, Kane, Frederick, Puck Colson. I don't know if it's as accurate, to call them the dirtier team anymore, right? Like, I think Edmonton plays with some edge as well, but the odds are they probably are more heavily penalized. But will we see it? Will we see those plays get called? Will we see the cross checks, the extra stuff after the whistle, I mean, they showed a clip, and it was Kachuk going after McDavid last year and just starting to throw punches at him. Like, I don't even think there was a penalty on the play. It was just, he just did it, got away with it, and moved on. Like, what are we going to see?
Yeah, that one's always tough. I feel like they're going to try to let them play. Obviously, I feel like the more that the refs let them play, I think that does give an advantage to Florida. I think a guy like Kachuk thrives on it. I think Marchand thrives on it. I think they draw the rest of their guys in on that. And again, it's not to say that some of Edmonton guys don't, but it's not their bigger names that do, right? So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a difference, right? So you can have maybe some of your third and fourth line guys who love getting into that, but when it's your stars on the other side, that means a lot more to that team.
Yep.
When you see your top players,
They don't
doing
want
it.
to see it. They don't want to be in there.
Correct. So like I think that helps them. I don't know how it's going to go. I feel like they'll just play it by ear in the sense of, you know, if it gets too chippy too early and the stars aren't getting to shine, I think the league will probably step in and be like, let's get a couple power plays, get a few more calls in. But I think
Settle it down.
I think most finals don't end up being like 4-3 power plays. I think you're going to see more of a like 2 each, 3-2. I don't think it should be a very high amount of power plays despite the high, you know, level of
In
the
general,
skill.
like, I was talking about this with some people when we were watching one of the games not that long ago. And I mean, in reality, even by the conference finals, they're not calling anything marginal. They're not calling the cross checks in front of the net. They're not calling the hacks. They're not calling these kind of things. They're calling a tripping call because your stick's in his feet and the guy goes down. You have to call it. They're calling the ones where it's a high stick and the guy's head reacts, whether you hit him or not. I mean, lots of debates and whatever. But, you know, the stick comes up, the head goes back, they call it. They have to call those. So all the little kind of miscreant stuff that just kind of happens, they tend to let go unless, you know, maybe they've told you, okay, that's enough, skate away, and you give them one more chop or you give them one more punch or whatever, then they'll call you and put you in the box for it. But yeah, I think you're right. They'll try to limit it as much as they can. And then after that, it just kind of, most of those other ones are kind of just luck. You know, you have your stick there and he trips over it. You can't not call it. It's right
Yeah.
there in front of him. You
Yeah.
know, you didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. It is what it is. But yeah, pretty much everything people mean to do, you don't get called for, to be honest, unless it's real violent.
And I feel like so far, and they try to stay consistent, obviously, when they can. But I know we all see reffing differently. But we've both been refs in sports before, and it's not easy to get everything right.
No.
But I don't feel like it's been much of a factor in this playoffs for me. I don't feel like any team's been like, oh, this team dominated the other team in this series because they had 7, 9 more power plays than the other team. I feel like it's always been close enough. But even in the games we watch, you see a lot of teams pass power play back and forth. It's not like 3 in a row, 4 in a row usually. So in that scenario, I don't think it's been much of a factor. And so I think it'll be more of the same. I think you'll see more or less back and forth, unless, like you said, there's just a couple of obvious ones that you just have no choice but to call. But even then, I've watched, I think, the Toronto series finish up and a couple other series finish up where there still was a clear penalty, but they were just like, well, you know, it's within a goal. We're not blowing it down.
Yeah,
either way.
I'm not awarding this to somebody.
The one team earn your way back in, the other team hang on and earn your win, and we're just not getting in on it. So that's where I think there won't be a ton, and hopefully there isn't.
Yeah. So I think we covered power play. We mostly got through the PK as well, just talking about like the McDavid add-on and obviously the Barkov situation and where that is on the other side of it. So let's get to like what's different. You know, what are we looking at? What have they added? What's new? What's actually going to make a difference in this series compared to last year? So for me, I'll go with Edmonton. Obviously, no Hyman. It's a big blow for them, him being injured and out. A leader in the dressing room, on the ice, just hitting people like crazy this year and still getting goals, still contributing offensively. It's a big difference. But the other thing that's different is Draisaitl and Kane. Draisaitl was, I think it was ribs and maybe a wrist or something like that against Vancouver. I saw a stat. He got 24 points in the first 2 series. He got 7 points in the last 2 series. So this year we're looking at a much healthier Draisaitl. And then Kane obviously did not play since last year's final. He had knee surgery, hip surgery, hernia surgery. He had a lot of stuff fixed. He played, I think, the first 2 or 3 games, and then that was it. And even in those, he couldn't sit down. He was just standing at the end of the bench for most of it. He was not a factor in that series. So having those two back, I think could be a huge difference maker and a really big difference. Obviously, you've got some other players, your Frederick, Podkolzin, Arvidsson, you know, Wallman, Klingberg, stuff like that. But I think these are guys that are the ones that are expected to step up. So them not being injured, I think, is a big what's different for Edmonton.
Yeah, for sure. If I was to stay with Edmonton as well, I agree. I obviously, yeah, the Hyman thing is going to hurt them a little. I don't think it's going to hurt them as bad as maybe some people do. I do hold Hyman into high regards, and in this type of series, I think he'd do quite well. But I think the fact that you got Kane back, and I honestly believe that that Wallman Klingberg to me is probably the biggest change, from my opinion, from this year. If we're just saying from this year to last year, and why it will be possibly a different outcome. I believe those two have been the biggest change, and then obviously Skinner.
Yep.
If Skinner continues to play like he is, he's going to be a massive difference, and you could be looking at him for Conn Smythe, even despite having a bad go. If he goes in there and gets two shutouts, and they win the Stanley Cup, and he has a good thing, like that's the world of difference, right? You know, because McDavid and them aren't scoring as much as they did last year.
Nope.
Even though they're doing well, they're not got that record type thing going on. So what are the major differences? These other guys were there. Even like when Kane went out in the finals, did he not? He was there for the whole rest of the way. So I don't think those are the real difference between last and this year. I think it's that third pair defense, whom could at any time be their second pair defense.
Yep.
I rate those two guys pretty much as high as Nurse and Kulak.
I think Wallman's still leading plus minus.
So I think that ability to be able to put those guys out on the ice and not overwork your top pairing against a team like Florida who likes to come and hit you, I think is going to be the big difference for Edmonton.
Yeah. All right. So what about Florida? Obviously, a big difference for them is Marchand, getting him there at the end, and like you mentioned, Seth Jones, a couple other defenders, a couple other forwards. Those are kind of the big names, the big guys. Third pairing guy Nate Schmidt, that kind of thing. But for the most part, they're running it back with the majority of the same group as last year. So what's different for them? What's going to kind of get them back over the hump and make sure they take this thing again?
I think, like obviously Seth Jones and Marchand, both impact players, both tons of experience. Marchand, especially, the guy's been a winner at different levels for a long time. He's been around some of the top level, leaders and winners and Sid and guys like that. And he spends a lot of time with Sid and McKinnon. And so, he's still always going to have that drive, despite the fact he's gotten older and his role has come down a little. And in Florida, he's not got the same role as he had in the past. But I think he's kind of thriving on that right now. I think he's kind of liking the idea of playing with a bunch of younger guys and not having to be all the pressure on him. And he's like a third line guy in there. So I think that's really going to help them. And so far has already through the playoffs. I think the biggest factor difference between whether you're going to see them win or not this year, like barring what the other team does, obviously, is, and this is not just for these guys, it's any team going back to back when they've won a cup. And there's a reason why, like we've already talked about earlier, in most of the back-to-back series through history, it's only been since 1977 was the last time a team actually won the second back-to-back against the same team. That was, I think, the Canadiens against the Bruins. It comes down to the drive. I know people always try to talk about how the second cup, it means as much, or you're hungrier because you got the taste of the first one. Well, I don't know if that's really truly the case. I feel like sometimes that's cliche. I think getting there the first time and winning it, I think does alleviate some of that drive for the next one. I know people try to say it differently, but I disagree. And I think you see it a lot of the time when these teams get back to it and they don't have the same drive as I think the Oilers are going to have, whom were that close to taste it and take that negative part. Like we always talk about in life, you learn more from mistakes than you do successes. When I also feel like the same thing comes to like a sport. Well, they both made the finals. Edmonton was so close and they go away with that bitter taste that they want to be rid of. The other guys go away with a taste that they love, but they've had it. So I don't think it's the same. So I think that's what the factor will be. Can they bring the same intensity? Can they bring the same drive? Can they bring the same want and lay it out on the line the same way I believe the Oilers are going to in this finals?
Well, that kind of takes us to like the last sort of just any other things, any intangibles, any sort of what else is going to set the tone for this. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is home ice. Edmonton having home ice. First and foremost, the last 20 years, I think it's 13-7 or 14-6, something like that. Whoever starts the Cup final at home has won. Obviously, that's the team with the better record in the regular season because they start with home ice. So you could make a case that that's usually the better of the two teams, but I mean that's not exactly how it works anyway, right? So, but I think home ice is a big one for these guys, and I think getting to have, if it comes down to it, 4 games in Edmonton rather than 4 games in Florida, I think that if it goes 7, that could be the difference.
Yeah, well, let's look at last year. It did go 7, right? And the
Yep.
home team got it. And the fact is, it's people could look at it and say, well, first off, Edmonton and Florida, a long way away from each other. So
Yep.
that's one last night in your own bed. It's a little extra more travel than the other team has to do because now Florida has to fly all the way up to Edmonton just to start the series, whereas
Hmm.
Edmonton didn't have to go anywhere during this little break. I know it's not a ton, but it really adds up when this is the last round of the whole playoffs. You've already been through a absolute war to get here. So your
Yep.
normal thought of like, oh, one extra flight, one extra night, it doesn't normally matter maybe on a normal day to day. But when you've been through a war, then it does matter. And so I think that could have a play on it. Obviously, it's nice to have the home fans to start you out in any series. You want to make sure you come out to a good start, make sure you hold home ice, get a bit of a momentum going.
Yep.
And it's nice to be able to do that at home. So I think that could be a massive factor, and I think it will be a factor. I think Edmonton plays substantially better at home than they do on the road.
Yeah. And when we talk about power play, we talk about all that stuff, all of it is better. Everything is better at home than it is on the road. Obviously, they've won a lot of games on the road anyway, but still, it definitely
Not in the
factors
same
in.
factor, though. I
Yeah.
feel like they dominate games at home, and they
Yeah.
can win games on the road, and so that's the difference. And so
Yeah.
getting maybe if you can get Florida, and again, this comes back to my point earlier, if you can get Florida down 2-0, I'm not saying in any way that anybody on Florida would just give up, but at the end of the day, they already have a Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? It sounds bad, but
Yeah.
like it's not. It's the other direction would be different. You'd be like, if you're an Edmonton guy, you're not going to be like, no, I don't have a copy or someone like Connor. You just don't know if you're going to get back there. Well,
Yeah.
these guys may not get back. Florida may never get back again, but at the end of the day, 98% of them, like you said, reran it and have a Stanley Cup. It's not like they'll ever go their whole career without a cup. So
Yeah.
getting that lead and putting that pressure on them early with a couple of home victories could make the difference of this series.
It could be huge. Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly. And you look at the travel, like when we talk about how much drive you have, I don't doubt that Florida has that drive still, that they would still want to do it. They'd still want to win, everything else. But you're also looking at a team that's got probably, for the majority of that team, they've played another 75 games the last 3 years, roughly. Call it 25 games, right? So 60 to 70, whatever games in the last 3 years, right? Extra. They've also traveled. I mean, it was Florida and Vegas. That's not a close flight. Like they've traveled Florida even this year, Florida, Toronto. Obviously, they could probably bus it. I think it was only a couple hours between Miami and Tampa Bay, but the first series would have been close. Carolina would have been somewhat close, but they were a long distance away from Toronto. So that's a big flight. That's a lot of effort. They're going to be worn down, and yeah, you got to have that drive and that extra commitment, that extra gear when you need it to really want where you're headed and want what you're doing. So if you think they still got it, then maybe they can push hard and get it. But I can't imagine any way they can match the desperation, match the drive that the Oilers have this year, led by their captain.
Nope, for sure. And I guess we're going to find out tomorrow night quick to see who comes out with that first step and who gets that pivotal first goal.
All right, what are we saying? What do you got for a prediction?
I think it's going to be 1 on the road, and I think the Oilers are going to win it 4-2.
Win it in 6, eh?
Yep.
All right, what am I going to pick? I was kind of thinking win it in 6, but now I'm going to go all the way to 7 and win it in 7. I think they're going to win a couple at home. I think Florida's going to win a couple at home, and they're going to trade them all the way along, and it's going to be a tough series. So I think it might go all the way to 7, and I think they're going to take it. And I think they're going to take it handily into Game 7. I think it's going to be no doubt when it comes down to it. They're going to jump out to an early lead and just give her all the way home. So that's. Although I'm fingers crossed for a 5. It'd be nice not to have to panic for another 2 weeks.
Hey, as a non-fan of either team, I'd take a 7. Made last year exciting for 2 teams I didn't care less about. So
you do care less about other teams. You love Edmonton, and you know you do. Don't even start
No, you can tell your buddy it's not happening.
it. All right. On that note, we will push forward, and we'll be with you for all of the episodes as we move forward, and kind of making sure that we can cover each and every episode as we go. So I want to thank you guys for listening. You can find us at sportsbuds.com. That's www.sportsbudz.com. We're on all your favorite podcast sources: Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, TuneIn, and YouTube. Make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And check out our social media, Instagram and Facebook. We've got a group. We've got Facebook all going there as well. Lots of comments, lots of things getting thrown around and stuff. So we love doing this for you guys. We really hope you're enjoying it. And if there's anything you need us to say different, and even if it's Simpson, getting him more on board, he's getting closer. I know we're winning him over. So we got to keep driving it home, making sure he understands what the best team is. And then next year we can just focus on Oilers the whole year instead of having to even talk about the Flames. It's been a nice break, actually, in these playoffs.
Yeah, unfortunately, this same break that happens every year. So kind of getting used to it.
Such a tough time with a Flames fan. Anyway, thank you guys, and thank you, Simps. Great talk, and I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a heck of a series.
Yeah, here we go. Take care.